So, David, lots to jump into here. We've been talking a lot about this, and the phone calls and texts have been going crazy most of the afternoon, bringing up what happened over the weekend, that anti-NATO rally, the pro-Palestinian protests, and beyond that, the lack of very much action from the city. So what's your take on what you've seen?
Well, yet again, it seems we're having this conversation every time there is similar types of protests like the ones we saw over the weekend. And we're going to have to face the fact that, one, we are now at a point where the city's administration, Valérie Plante, Projet Montréal, there's overwhelming evidence now since the October 7th attacks back in 2023 that we are in front of an administration that is clearly comfortable with tolerating these types of protests that get into violence, get into anti-Semitism, get into hate. You mentioned yourself this afternoon, you talked about the McGill occupation, the Victoria Square occupation. And we know, on top of that these groups, these far-left groups, are tied to the same groups that do the yearly, very violent protests against, quote-unquote, police brutality. Remember that one?
Yeah, sure.
That comes up every year. And they break stuff, and they attack cops, and they damage storefronts, and we just accept it at Projet Montréal. The same administration that still has on the payroll Boshram and I, the supposed commissioner for anti-racism, who publicly supported the pro-Palestinian cause and attended speeches by Adil Sharkawi, of all people, noted hate speech and anti-Semite. So we are in front of a situation where you have the administration, and it's the left and the far left. You tie in the same people that are in Projet Montréal are also tied to Québec Solidaire, also tied to the NDP. These is a younger base, and the polls show that the younger you go in the polling, the more support there is for the pro-Palestinian cause and less support for pro-Israel. But there is no justification for this. And you talk about the right to protest, and Valérie Plante talks about the right to protest. This is no longer a question about the right to protest. This is about legitimizing illegal civil disobedience. And a few weeks ago, there was a motion in the National Assembly condemning civil disobedience that turns into violence, and Québec Solidaire refused to vote for it. Because in the left, it's okay. If you're on their perceived side of virtue, it's okay to be violent. It's okay to block the Jacques Cartier Bridge for 6 hours, as we saw a few weeks ago. It's okay to paralyze because we didn't see much of that in the news, but it did happen also over the weekend, paralyze the Valero refinery in the East End because the cause is okay. And you have on top of that UQAM professors saying, there's a legal defense for this, because it's the defense of necessity, because there's nothing else you can do to fight against these horrible things that are going on. So there's a tolerance, and Valérie Plante and Projet Montréal have to be called out for accepting this escalation, for the fact that Montrealers now, for over 14 months now, do not feel safe, especially members of the Jewish community. But it goes beyond that. And that we are tolerating and accepting threats of violence, hate speech, and we're not doing anything about it. Now, to talk about Fadi Daguerre is interesting, and the SPVM is an interesting case in itself as well. Fadi Daguerre is a highly competent police officer. You've spoken to him many times. I've spoken to him many times. He has done some good things, both in Longueuil when he was chief and here. But he is from that maybe different philosophy of policing. It's more based on community policing, and he does not believe into the crackdowns, because the response to all this, what is this? This ultimately is going to be about what, Aaron? This is going to be about, okay, are we ready politically to see the reverse? If do we want to see people coming out, the police in riot gear, going on the offensive, going, starting using their batons, using tear gas, being proactively violent and engaging with the protesters, engaging with these people before? And are we willing to live with the images? That's what politically is stopping Fadi Daguerre, and what is stopping also Valérie Plante, because they don't want those images that harken back, to 20, 25 years ago, when we saw these images in Quebec City, for example, or in Seattle. And so the left is accepting this, but the toll right now and the price to pay is much too high, and it's unacceptable. We're tolerating illegal acts. We're tolerating violence. We're permitting it. And Valérie Plante, every time, she goes on and she says, the next day or 2 days later, she's going to say it's unacceptable and this, that, and the other thing, but nothing ever changes. And so are we willing politically to have the type of conversation where the next time this happens, you're asking me, did the police go too far? Because that's going to be the next conversation if we let police officers do what they actually want to do. Because when I speak to rank and file members of the SPVM, they don't want to take any risk because they don't feel they're going to get protected, and that Fadi Daguerre and the high command of the SPVM and the mayor and the politicians are going to have their backs. So they're staying back, and we keep on accepting this every time there's a protest. And the fact is, we're getting to a point now where, as Montrealers, we don't trust the institutions. And that's where social decay happens. But right now, there is, on the left and the far left, an acceptance of this because they disagree with what's going on in the Middle East right now. And because of that, it justifies what's going on here. And right now, the politician seems very comfortable of living with this.
For what you just mentioned now, David, I'll tell you that I got a text from someone saying, and you're kind of alluding to this, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems to me, you mentioned a Bashar Minaj, and of course, we all know there was a movement to get her out. The mayor decided, no, it's fine. She's apologized. It's okay. But this idea that someone has, a couple of texts suggesting this is this administration not wanting to upset that, Muslim vote, if you will, by coming out and doing something like, arresting people, taking names, putting people in jail. They don't want that. You talked about an image they don't want to see. What about the image we saw over the weekend that appeared in international press everywhere about what was happening in Montreal?
Yeah, I agree with you, Aaron, but in terms of, this is a battle. And Projet Montréal, Valérie Plante and Projet Montréal has taken a side. And they've taken the side of the pro-Palestinian protesters. Period. Let's stop dancing around this issue. The fact is that the evidence is overwhelming with what we saw at McGill, with what we saw at Victoria Square, with Bashar Minaj, with the fact that, Fadi Daguerre, as you said, and he's met with Jewish community leaders. He has sent more patrols, but at the end of the day, do we have a list of any cases that have been brought, serious cases on hate speech? Do we have any real evidence, any sense that this behavior that we have collectively from our institutions is going to change? No. Let's face it, the left wing, which is represented, let's face it, by Projet Montréal, Québec Solidaire, the NDP, they have taken a stance of pro-Palestinian. Their base is younger, the students and the younger generations. Again, the polling shows it. The younger you go, the more you're pro-Palestinian. The older you go, the more you're pro-Israel. And so the idea here is that there is a philosophy on the left that breaking the law is okay. All means are acceptable if you're on the side of virtue, according to them, of course. And so everything that we've seen, this violence and this refusal of the Plante administration and Fadi Daguerre and the SPVM brass to crack down and to preempt this, because we know this is coming. We know this. We know that during these big events, there's going to be violence. We know there's going to be anti-Semitism. We know there's going to be hate speech. This was not a surprise, what happened over the weekend. This is not, well, this came out of nowhere. No, we knew this. And so here we are again, picking up the pieces. Yes, the reputation of Montreal internationally takes a hit, but the fact is that Valérie Plante and Fadi Daguerre prefer to do this dance that they do every time after these despicable incidents, rather than having to answer to their collective base, political base, to the other side of this, which would be the images of police officers proactively and violently, I'm afraid, engaging with the protesters.
David, got to leave it there. So much. It's going to be interesting over the next couple of days to see if there is any additional reaction. I know Fadi Daguerre talked about those 3 arrests, saying that they were looking into others. We'll see where that goes.
Oh, they've been looking.
Yeah,
he's been looking
a while
into others for. He's been looking. He's been looking into this since the events towards synagogues and Jewish schools after the October 7th back in November 2023. Yeah. He's been looking into that.
David Heurtel joins us every Monday afternoon. David, thanks. I appreciate it.
All right. Have a great week.
You too.